Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Kindship Live for this month. Let us know if you can see us so I know we're actually live. It says on our end that we are. If you're just tuning in for the first time, my name's Sandy. I'm one of the co-founders at Kindship, and today we are joined by Sally Armstrong, who I am lucky enough to have as my OT and my daughter's OT. I'm going to share her with you just for today. So don't try and steal her away from me. So Sally is an occupational therapist. But she's so much more than that. So she's been OT for 12 years now and has really worked across like the spectrum of like a lifespan, implementing her craft. So she's worked with infants and babies. So she started off there, moved over to London and got to work with adults with high behaviour needs, and then came back to Australia and has worked with adolescents and actually worked at IMI school back in the day. We didn't know each other then, but it's a small world. So welcome to the call today, Sally.
Thank you. Excited
We're
to be
so
here.
we're so lucky to have you. So if you're jumping on, you can see us. Let us know so we know we're not talking to ourselves. That would be super helpful. And if you click the live stream link, we should be able to see your name because we're in StreamYard, which is outside of Facebook. So that would be helpful. So I thought today we'd kick off with sharing a bit about our journey so far with Sally, because while Sally's an OT, I said to her when we started, no one's ever talked to me about OT like this. Like, it was something really new for us. So when we first started, Sally started talking to us a lot about like the nervous system and regulation and how that can affect like your ability to communicate, and also behavior. So do you want to give like people kind of a bird's eye view of like how you got into that and just like a brief overview, Sally?
Yeah, most definitely. So as Sandy said, I am a OT that has worked in the behaviour space for my entire career, mostly predominantly with individuals with autism. And I think it just kind of developed over my career. So I was just seeing some things that were just kind of sitting outside of the typical OT role that weren't really being addressed or were just a bit confusing to me as a therapist.
Yeah.
So I started really working on that nervous system, that really beginning stage of regulation and understanding that, and then seeing how that works and influence people's, not just with behavioral needs, but in general with yourself and how you interact and engage with the world.
Mm.
So I guess like my approach really is, yeah, just definitely going back to some really early regulation skills. So even if the individual might be in their 20s, I will go back to very early, like what we discussed, how was Imi when she was a little baby, what calmed her, what did this, what did that, because those little
Mm.
things give us a clue into how someone's nervous system may already be primed and ready to take on things. And I guess like one of the theories that I absolutely love is the polyvagal theory, and we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
I'm no expert on that, but it's something that's really shaped my life. I was diagnosed with ADHD last year, and
Yeah.
that has changed my life completely. Working on that theory, and I guess like Sandy, how we worked, I do a lot of family therapy. I actually don't really work with the individual that much.
Mm.
I spend a lot of time with the family and working on their nervous system regulation, and then how that plays on to some occupations that individuals do. So that's kind of how I got into it. I'm a little bit different.
Yeah.
I guess one of the things I always say is normally people will be referred to me and ask when I'm going to see their child, and I actually rarely see your child.
Yeah. But I
It's
think
a
that
lot of
actually
time.
works better, and that's going to cover one of our questions later that I
Mm,
know came up in our group. But we've made more progress in the past like 6 months or so that we've been working together than in the last like say 6 years of just doing kind of your standard OT. And I think it is because you look at that whole like the nervous systems of the whole family. And
mm,
when we started working with Sally, she asked us to, or asked me to, because I'm the one who does all the things. We all know that that's what most families are like, right, mums? But like, think about, so when I'm in like say a flight state or a fight state, what does that look like for me? How does that feel in my body? What does it look like for everybody else? And then like what does it look like for my husband, and what does it look like for my son? And because that has then allowed me to know when I should address things with people as well. So it's really funny. I was Richie won't mind me telling everybody this, but even if he did, like he knows that I'm going to talk about him when I get on lives anyway. So I worked out one of his strategies when he's in flight was to like go into the scroll hole on his phone. And like I would get angry because we're supposed to be watching something together or doing something together and he's in the scroll hole and I would be like, are you actually going to talk to me at some point? And then he'd go, raw, and he'd move to fight, which is, as Sally would say, down the ladder.
Yeah.
So I've actually made him dysregulate more by trying to take away his coping mechanism. And I was just like, oh my God, this is like fascinating. Like just the
Yeah.
way you look at things is completely different.
And like, I guess, the biggest part of it, and we could talk a little bit later about the very basic principles of polyvagal theory, but when you're parenting a child with a disability, your nervous system and their nervous system are so linked. So because they're dysregulated so much of the time, you become dysregulated. And so
Yeah.
actually the way that we can help you is actually not work on the child's nervous system, it's work on your nervous system first, because they're contagious.
Yeah.
Because it's a parent being well rested and well able to manage their own nervous system will then influence when you interact with them. You're not going to be so fast. You're not going to be so just quick to maybe, like, it's little things you don't even realize. Like a frown can then send a nervous system into fight flight, which then
Yeah.
perceives that they need to be, there's an issue here and there's a connection disruption. So
Mm.
those little things we work on. And I guess they're little things that sometimes lots of therapists do look at, but a lot of the time, like when you're trained in therapy, a lot of people are looking just at the child. We play such a minor role in a family's life. The child is with you majority of the time. It's actually the parents we need to look at and
Yes.
provide therapy for, and then you look at the child. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and yeah, and I think where we see, and I've seen a big shift in my results, as you say, when we work with families, is when I stopped looking at the child
Mm.
and looked at the family.
Yeah, well,
Um,
makes so much sense
yeah,
because it's a unit. They don't exist in
yeah,
this little bubble over there on their own.
no,
Like, yeah.
no. And like there's so many things, that you're, example for the nervous system. If you're not, if you go out in the community and in the past you've had a really challenging time and all this stuff, your next thought when you go out again is this is going to be hard. But if
Mm,
we can do some work with you prior to go, okay, how do I get my nervous system in a space that is maybe not so dysregulated? And my
mm,
thoughts are, this is going to go okay, then it's going to be more successful.
mm.
You unknowingly, you don't consciously have a control over your nervous system, but we
Yeah.
can consciously shift it so
Mm.
that it's in a more regulated,
Yeah.
resilient state. I think one of the quotes that I absolutely love and I live by is the quality of your life is based on the resilience of your nervous system. You can't
Mm.
go out and do amazing things and be resilient if your nervous system is just really low and it's not able to cope with stress. So for
Yes.
families with disability, your stress levels are so high. So how can we in therapy increase your resilience so you can
Yes.
overcome things?
Drop the mic. See, speaking my language. Um, I was just going to say there's two things that come up then, and I'm going to try and remember both. The first one was when you said about it being contagious. It made me think about that. Remember that time I told you about where Cooper spilt his shake in the kitchen, and he literally spilt a whole protein shake all over the counter, all over the floor, and he was swearing and carrying on. And I walked into the kitchen, and like I met him where he was at, like without
Mm,
realizing it. I just went, "What are you going on?" Like I immediately went into that fight state. And then afterwards, I was like, oh, that was the thing. That was what Sally's been
yeah.
talking about. So then, like, now I try really hard to be like, okay, let's just take a breath. Like, what happened? Let's just fix it. We don't need to yell about it. Yeah, it was just, it's once you learn about it, then you start seeing it everywhere.
Mm. And I
And
think,
it's fascinating.
for like for young families and stuff, you go and get your NDIS plans, and someone's giving you all these goals, and it's all confusing. And there's words like self-regulation being thrown around, and like I want my child to be able to self-regulate and make these decisions. Well, we actually can't self-regulate. You will learn an ability to self-regulate, but as adults, we will still co-regulate. And it's actually that word there. So that example there is that,
Yeah.
you know, with Cooper, you actually then you couldn't co-regulate. You both went up to fight, flight, but the breath allowed you a co-regulation section so that he
Yeah.
can bounce off your emotions. So when we look at young children or individuals on this, with disabilities, they need that ability for someone to remain calm and maintain their emotions. But then the hardest part is because you're so tired and
Yes.
because you've been doing this for so long, you can't co-regulate.
Yeah.
So that's where we come in, and that's why it's all about families, and that's
Yeah.
why it's about the parents, because
I
you
love
need
it.
time to learn to be able to be resilient and then learn co-regulation and
Yeah.
then go to there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that, I suppose that's what Sally's teaching me to do now personally, like through my OT sessions, is because I got to a stage of so much burnout. It's like trying to go back and relearn the skills so I can self regulate, because then I can help everybody else
Yeah.
regulate. Yeah.
And also
Amanda's just commented
co-regulate.
too.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Amanda said, so true. I was so anxious taking Ashton to the park yesterday. I had to talk myself down on the drive there. Yeah, very, very normal.
Yeah.
All right,
And I think
so
I was just going to say the hard part as well, we've talked about this, Sandy, so much, and a lot of work I do with my families too. The NDIS don't understand this. They don't understand that families need support workers, because sometimes you cannot co-regulate anymore and you need a break. You need a break from co-regulation so you can work on yourself to then come back to your family. There's no point giving you a support worker at 18. I've got 18 years of nervous system then to work back through.
yeah,
If you give us some support when we're 10, 11, 12, mum and dad can have a break. Mum and dad can work on their nervous system. Mum and dad can come back in and support.
yeah,
Because you can't support a dysregulated nervous system when you're dysregulated.
exactly. And I think Sally's one of the only therapists I've ever heard say this, but she goes, they give kids too much therapy. NDIS give too much therapy. And I was like, oh, but that's your job. Like, but she, like, in what she means is that, like, you actually need to implement it in real life situations. So we've had so much success recently with Emmy because she's been in the community so much, implementing what we're learning from Sally. And so we're going on a cruise tomorrow and we're doing all that means everyone's crossing everything and got all the visuals and like we can't be any more prepared. But she's learnt those skills not from a 1 hour session once a week with Sally. She's learnt those skills being implemented in the community with her support carers and with us, like, regularly at home. So it's actually a really refreshing way to talk about how supports can be implemented.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's just there's so much therapy. You get therapized out.
Yeah. Therapy fatigue. Yeah. So what'd you say to me once? You said, she's done enough therapy. You've done enough therapy. Therapy's done. I was like, yes, sisters.
Every parent, you're a speech pathologist, you're an OT, you're a behavior support practitioner. You know what? Just be mum. Just be dad.
Yeah.
Just be
I'm
a
really
family.
looking forward to that this weekend, being mum. Like, I don't think I've had a holiday just being mum, so that will be
And I know,
nice.
like, the worst thing I always hate is, you know, and again, I'm a therapist and I see this, but like when I work with my staff members, coming back to a parent and saying, so how did that strategy go? Well, do you know what? I didn't have time.
Yeah.
That 1 hour that you did in that session, I didn't have time to put that in place.
Yeah.
Let's not do that. Let's go, okay, so talk to me about your week. How did it go? What happened? Talk to me about a situation. Okay, let's talk through that. Do you reckon there was another strategy we could have used?
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like I'm getting like my own therapy at the same time when I talk to you. Love it. All right, let's get on to some. Hey, Narelle, sorry, just saw your comment. Let's get on to some of the questions from our community. So, and I think we've kind of answered this one, but was how can we provide effective OT for older children over 12, especially those who resist therapy at home or school?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Sandy, we talked about this. For me, someone over 12 has had a lot of therapy. They're also really tired from school. There's so many demands on them that sometimes they just need to be a child. And you guys as well, parents just need a break. They just need to be mum and dad. So therapy for me, when I get a 12-year-old or someone older than that, is parent therapy. So asking your therapist, can I have some sessions? Can I work? So sometimes I do mum, then I'll do dad, and then I do mum and dad together, and then I do all family. So that type of stuff when you're over 12, asking for those things. family therapy.
Actually, I should get you to talk to Cooper. He's never done that. Like, it might be actually really helpful for him to hear it from somebody else.
Yeah.
Okay, and then how can behaviour therapy be adapted for young non-verbal children with moderate intellectual disabilities and a limited understanding of consequences?
Yeah, no, most definitely. So I guess as well, so obviously I'm OT with behavioural experience, and I'm obviously different from behavioural specialists that are doing your PBSs and all that. When I look at behavioural therapy or techniques for an individual that is non-verbal, so obviously thinking always the time when someone's got behavioural or behaviours of concern, they're communicating something. It might not be very like obvious what they're communicating, but someone that's maybe non-verbal and doesn't understand consequences, I always work on that. We're not looking at the consequence. We're looking at the relationship, the ability to regulate their nervous system. So someone that's non-verbal, they're actually very, very good at picking up other people's nervous systems. So unknowingly, their behaviours might be because the person that's working with them is dysregulated and showing them that their nervous system is in fight flight. So there's the term called neuroception, which is part of the polyvagal theory. And that is that we are seeking and looking for cues of safety and danger at all times. Individuals that aren't verbal, they have an exceptional ability to search for this. So our behavior techniques are around showing them safety cues, showing them that this area and these things are okay to do.
Yeah.
And that then the consequence will be consistency, predictability. The most impact you're going to have is when you're predictable. Because if you said one time I can do this, but one time I can't do that, things, of course, my behavior is going to escalate because I don't know what you're asking me to do. So that's how I always look at someone that's maybe non-verbal. They can communicate amazing things to you, people that are non-verbal.
Yeah.
So I would be looking at behavior therapy like that. What in the environment? So another example, we have an individual that is having some behavioral issues in the classroom, maybe becoming escalated. Where are they placed in the classroom? Because if someone's in a heightened state of their nervous system, the first thing they're going to look for is their exits. So if you're placing somebody very far back in the classroom, they may not be able to see where they can leave or if they have an option to leave. So then their nervous system's going to start escalating, and then they'll move down into what's called fight, which is then more mobilization.
Yeah.
So little things even like that with behavior therapy. It's not about just the consequences. It's not about you do this, you do that, you get this. It's how can you adapt the world, their occupations, what are they doing to then support their nervous system to be in the optimal arousal. That's the next part of it, is that we can't expect someone to learn if they're in fight, flight. They need to be in what's called safe and social, or you would have heard of it as optimal arousal maybe. So how do we get them there? And then they can learn techniques.
Yeah, this makes so much sense. I'm just going to share Corinne's comment. So I think this was in regards to the parent or sibling doing a session. So great, that's a great idea. I'm not even allowed in the same room as Zoe when she's having therapy. I'd love to be more involved. Perhaps you can like ask for that, Corinne. Like just say, look, I've heard of other therapists doing it. Like, can I have a session and we can talk about Zoe and how I can help? Because it can be done. Like as long as you're working towards their goals and their NDIS plan, like that's what it's for. So I think this other question kind of relates to what you were talking about before. So like how would someone set realistic like behavioral goals for a therapy session?
I guess like it's just depending again, what's the outcome, what's the expected outcome of someone. So when we would look at it from a nervous system, so when I would look at it from a nervous system thing, it's what are we trying to do? Because you need all the different arousal levels. So you need to go into fight, flight sometimes, or shut down what they call a lower level of arousal. So for example, if we're looking at going into community, so I always am out in the community with clients. So the community, I need a level of fight, flight. So those behavioral responses are about going out there and then like kind of putting in realistic strategies that help them during those times. One of the biggest things you'll see is people want to, and again, it's just everyone's preference, but being angry isn't a bad thing. Anger is what's needed. The things that happen because of anger are the things that we need to work on.
Yeah.
So a lot of times you'll see in therapy, everyone wants to just maybe no one get angry, like, oh, no, back it off. I don't do that. I make sure that we're like going through that arousal zone.
Yeah.
But in a safe setting. So there, how you would just say it just depends what you're going for. So say the realistic behavioral goal, it just depends what the outcome is. Is
Yeah.
it to go into the community? Because then the realistic behavioral goal is that they can tolerate being in the community, tolerate noises, their nervous
Mm.
system's well regulated, they understand expectations. There's a whole range of things. But
Yeah.
always think of the function. What's the purpose?
Yeah. And I think like what we've done, like to give a real life example with Emmy over the past like few months, has been a perfect goal to set. So the goal was for us to have a family holiday together and for Emmy to be able to come and participate and for everyone to have a good time. That was the
Mm,
goal. So then in the lead up to that, what we've been doing is so we had a meeting. So Sally and I had a meeting, then me, Sally, and our support carers who were going to help us had a meeting. We identified things that we thought would be triggers for Emmy on the ship, and then in that few months, every second weekend, the carers have taken Emmy out and have worked on strategies going to those triggers. So going to work arcades, going to lolly shops, going to ice cream places, and then we've tested out different strategies to see how she'd respond to them. And it's like now, like arcades aren't even a deal now. It was so funny
mm.
because everyone's like, "Oh, don't take it to the arcades; they're a trigger." But then we've just given her so much arcade that now she's kind of like, you know,
And
they're
we've allowed
cool.
us to safely move through the emotions. I always
Yeah.
use the example of, and sometimes it makes sense. It makes sense in my head, but imagine it's a tunnel, right? And then suddenly in the middle of the tunnel, I added a U-turn because I don't want to continue feeling angry. Well, then I've never got to the end of the tunnel. I didn't see how it ended. So
Mm,
every time I get angry, I don't know if it's going to finish. So I escalate even further.
yeah.
Where with children with emotions, if I allow them to go through anger and come out okay and keep them safe, they know they can do it. So then the
Mm,
incidents get shorter and shorter and shorter. I used to say to when I managed a high behavior unit, no incident's bad. We just learn. We learn
mm,
what worked and what didn't work, and next time we try again.
yes.
But again, that's really hard for families because people in the past have like maybe looked at you in the community like, what are you doing?
Mm,
Or you're not regulated enough, or you can't cope with them going through the emotions. So that's where then that again we talked about we work with the family because you've got to be okay with them going through the emotion.
yeah.
But if
Yeah.
you're dysregulated, you can't.
Yeah. Um, That's so true. And I think what I like, even what I've learned through the process has been so important. Like, I know now, Emmy actually can regulate. Everyone just needs to give her the time to regulate. Sometimes people want to rush her through the process, and that's where the issues happen. It's actually not
Mm.
her. It's like if I try and rush her, if someone else tries to rush her, that's the catalyst. So it's not
Yeah,
actually her.
it's
It's
our
like,
perceived idea that she needs to stop.
mm,
And so then
mm,
everyone's moving her through, or you'll see it, everyone just stops the activity because it's like, oh, no, no, no. And then it's like, well, now you've just learned that your emotions are too much
mm,
and your things get taken from you.
yeah.
So, it's quite upsetting. If imagine if like I use the example of someone when you're upset and someone telling you to calm down.
I hate
That's the
that.
worst strategy in the
It's the
world.
worst.
But to people with disabilities, we do it all the time. Calm down,
Yeah.
calm
Yeah.
down. I just go, oh, angry. Someone's
Yeah.
angry.
And I think I love that it's about teaching them how to experience the emotion, not how to push it down, like, we're not there to bottle it up. Like, let's teach you how to be angry, like, in a, like,
Mm.
good way, like, because you can every as you said, like, every emotion is valid and needed at some point.
Yeah, they're all needed. And it's things like, for example, when, I didn't work with Amy at school, but other kids in the playground, it's something like, you want the swing. Like, I understand that you want the swing, but you have to wait.
Yeah.
Like,
And
you
that's
can stand over there.
frustrating. Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
off you go. We can stand here for 20 minutes. That's fine. You're still
Yeah.
going to be frustrated.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
But
not going to
teaching
tell
them
you to
how to,
go off.
yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise, you'll see lots of people go, oh, go to the trampoline. It's like, but she doesn't want the trampoline. So
Yeah.
you can just wait here now and we'll just let you go. But again, I can do that as not a parent at that time because I'm
Yes.
regulated.
Yeah.
If I'm not regulated, no way. I'm like, right, to the
Yeah.
trampoline you go because I can't handle this.
Mm.
So it all comes back to the person that's supporting being regulated. And
Yeah.
that's where it comes back to then, like for Corinne, for you going into that session and saying, this is my child, I need to know how to support them. How do I maintain my regulation during this time?
Yeah, love it. Okay, so there's a question about restrictive practices. Can you explain restrictive practices in occupational therapy?
Yeah, so obviously, again, I'm no expert on restrictive practices. They are obviously there to, I looked up the definition, so I had it exactly. But it's restricting the right of freedom of movement. There's obviously the 5 of them,
Yes.
which are chemical, environmental, mechanical, seclusion, and physical. Obviously, from an OT point of view, where we'd come in is again looking at the function of an occupation. So, what is that person wanting to do, or what are we wanting them to do in their life so their quality of life increases?
Yeah.
Then we're working with the behaviour support on, are there things that we need to implement to make sure that everyone maintains safety and they're able to do them. So a lot of your time, your OTs will come in with more mechanical restraints. And this may look like a harness in a car, or typically like a buckle
Jimmy has a
cover.
harness. Yeah.
Yeah, those type of things. That's kind of where the OT is coming in. But also, I'd always say to people with restrictive practices, make sure your OT's looked at the function of what the restrictive practice is. So what is it enhancing in their occupation? Is it enhancing their ability to get in the community? Is it enhancing their ability to do their daily living? To make sure there's a reason
for it, yeah, rather than just a restriction for the sake of making things easier for other
Yeah,
people. Yeah.
yeah. What skill building is there?
Love it. Okay, what are the differences between ABA and behavioral therapy? Because I think they do get confused a lot.
Yeah, they do. Again, I'm no expert, but I've only really ever worked in the positive behaviour space, not the ABA space. But positive behaviour is more a belief that all behaviours serve a purpose and they're influenced by environmental factors. It is the one the NDIS predominantly uses. It's about understanding the function of behaviour and then how we can adapt the environment to support that, where ABA is more of a, like, rooted in psychology principles of behaviour. So it is more observable and measurable behaviours typically. They're like more about like interventions that are more on like consequences and like, or reinforcements and punishments maybe.
Yeah.
Look, I've never worked in ABA, but I've seen some great results in ABA. So I've seen results in ABA for like activities of daily living. From a nervous system perspective where I work, it doesn't go well with my principles.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't look, sometimes it's mostly about you do this and you do this, where in nervous systems I'm like more flexible, where I'm like, how are you presenting today? This is what we'll do, rather than XYZ. But again, I've seen some people love it.
Yeah, I've heard mixed reviews too. Like I'm in a few groups who have a lot of adults who are neurodivergent who are very against it. And from their experiences, I can absolutely understand, like from what's happened to them. And then I know there's particularly one of the mums in our group who has had an awesome experience with her son, and he seemed to really like it. So I think there must be places for you can't. It's no one right way to climb a mountain, right? So I think as long as we're mindful of everybody's rights and freedoms and experiences
and choice. And look, the most thing you'll see is when I see individuals that have done it, we may just see a lot of demand avoidance because a lot of demands have been placed on them, and so then typically they just may pull away. But then again, how we work on that from a nervous system point of view is let them know that it's safe and that they have a choice and control over these demands, and then over time they would maybe bring back their demand.
I was going to say something before. There's something you said, and I was like, "Oh my god, that's Imogen." The frowning forehead. I do it too, actually. And Sally's actually used it in one of the visuals in For Our Holiday. But when now we're talking about demands, if I see Immy and she's like this, or if she's up, like we've worked out, if she's up, standing up on her tippy toes, there are times where she's like more aroused, which is not the right time to be putting demands on. So even having like information like that is so interesting. So when we went camping, I could see her. She was standing like this. I'm like, oh, it's time for a rest. Like, and she went back and she actually rested for an hour on her iPad. And then you could see as the hour went on, her frown started lifting.
And
So
I think
knowing,
where that one, comes in really well is we talked about this, Sandy, and this is how it normally starts. People say, oh, they go from 0 to 100, 0 to 100, can't pick a
yeah,
trigger. And so then when we look at their nervous system, there are clearly identifiable signs that they've dropped down what we call the ladder, which is a Deb Dana, who's an OT, designed, where actually the nervous system has started shifting down. So it's not in safe and social anymore, but they're little things you may miss. So you actually think she's at 0, but she's
yeah,
actually at 50. And then the
yes.
demand comes in. And then you're like,
What
whoa,
was the other thing that her feet when she was sitting
yeah,
on the lounge and they were like really tense, like she's ready to run?
yeah.
Like it's just so interesting. Amanda's just said, yep, ABA and PDA don't mix.
No, that is probably the worst combination you could
Yeah.
have.
Very true. What strategies encourage social interaction for adolescents who prefer solitude?
Yeah. So again, it would just be about this, this is obviously quite a broad one, but normally, like if that was the reason somebody came to me, was around social engagement, is then I'd start to look at where, social engagement mostly happens when we're feeling safe and social. So if you think about it for yourself, I am terrible at going out and about if I'm feeling anxious or anything like that. It's the last thing I want to do. So it's the same with someone that we look at if they're deciding to withdraw. Is it because their nervous system is so far down that they are just not able to cope, their resilience? So we talked about that quality of life is the resilience of your nervous system. But also the other thing I always work with families is this, when we look at someone that maybe has social challenges or doesn't want to go on anything, is this a goal of theirs? We need to provide them with the skills and the opportunity. But if they still choose not to do it, then that's a preference of theirs. But you always need to provide them the skills and the choice. So an adolescent that's social withdrawing, I would start to look at when I'd ask them, like the family, how I'd spend time with the family. When are they safe and social? Talk to me about that. What does it look like? And then I say, what does the environment look like? What is happening in a space? Because actually we may need to start replicating that a little bit more to then engage them in more social things, say that this is okay, you've been okay, you had a great time, now I'm going to do it again. Where if we try, lots of times people may be like, okay, come on out, we're going out, you've got to come out of your room, you've been in there too long. So it was a scary, anxious time. So then I'm going to stay back in here because I can control that. So it's just gradual steps.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes valuing the way they like to connect rather than the way we think that they should connect. Like a friend of mine, her daughter loves to talk to her friends online. So all day she'll be online. She's speaking to people all over the place. She's not really a people in person, but she's very social with her friends over the internet or over the phone. So that's just her preferred way of interacting. There's a question here actually live. So Antonia said the toes and frowning forehead are interesting signs of escalation. Are there other subtle signs? My daughter has PDA or is PDA.
Yeah, so your body will typically, I guess the best one is to start working out your understanding. So as Sandy mentioned, when we spent time together, I actually made her characteristics of what she looks like and herself when she's escalating, and there actually are physical signs that everyone will show. So typically the toes one, and again, Sandy's saying, I talk about my partner all the time. He's like, stop talking about me. But you'll see with feet, what happens with feet is when people are relaxed and social and ready to go, their feet are really relaxed. And it goes back to when you look at a little baby. When a baby's really calm and relaxed and they've had all their needs, their toes and their feet are very calm. When things are starting to not grow so well, they'll start curling.
And the toes go.
Yeah, their toes will come and then they start going on the side. So for individuals, a lot of the times people, they'll say, oh, but individuals on the spectrum stand on their tippy toes a lot of the time. They do. But sometimes you'll see every time they escalate, they're actually up on their tippy toes because their nervous system is up. So you'll see a lot more. Other signs you might see too is a lot of like backwards, like defensive posture, arching. So it's more defensive, the frowning. Some people, when you start to work through it, people will say certain words. So one participant I had used to start talking. So he never actually talked, but when he was escalating, he'd start talking.
I have a kid like that at my school.
Yeah. So these were early warning signs,
Ah,
subtle signs of escalation, but in the
yeah.
body, you're going to start to see tenseness. So my
Mm.
partner, when he starts to get a little bit anxious, his toes will start going like this. So I know that like
Yeah.
something, I'm terrible. I'm like, what's up with you? What's going on? So I'm not helpful, but
Making a bit.
poking the bear. It's like, stop it. But the little things you'll start to see. So even in yourself, you'll start to
Yeah.
notice little signs. But most of the times, the frowning is a really big one. But then
Yeah.
other time we'll see again in babies. If you look at babies, they'll get that where it looks like they're really tired around here, like their forehead gets like a little bit puffier.
A bump there, yeah.
Yeah, and then they'll start. It's just regulation happening,
Yeah,
and then
that's
you'll
interesting.
see.
Well, mine are like I stop talking.
Mm,
So I will just like Richie said to me the other week, like, "You okay? What's going on?" I'm like, "Yep." Like, and I was like, "Oh, I'm doing the thing." Like, and
yeah,
I start picking my eyelashes. I remember once I was on a call to you and I was sitting there going this, you're like, "Are you in flight?" I'm like, maybe. like, like I start fidgeting like with my hair or like grabbing my eyebrows and stuff like that. They can be tiny little signs, but it is
yeah.
like once you know them, they're quite obvious.
Yeah, and you'll notice too a lot of the times this might be for obviously individuals that are non-verbal. They become more rigid, so their body's not able to move as freely. So you'll
Mhm.
start to see them becoming more rigid in their movements. And scanning
Mm.
eyes is the next one. So somebody with when they're moving down will start scanning,
'Cause
and
it's
that
looking
is
for
from like
danger, isn't it?
looking for
Like, yeah.
danger. Yeah, from
Mm.
when cave times where you start looking for things. The other great example is dogs. Dogs are really good at showing you the shift in nervous system because
Mhm.
they shift their nervous systems down too. So you'll see a dog like becomes more like rigid. So similar to us, we'll display similar signs.
Mm. Interesting. Um, I feel like we've covered some of the next one. What are common triggers for behavioural issues in children with disabilities? How can we identify them? Did you have anything to add to that one?
I guess like again, it's your most unmet needs, communication needs, sensory
Communication.
needs, yeah,
Yeah.
pain, something's not internally okay. And I guess
Yeah.
this is also where OTs will definitely come in and work is when, and this happens for me, this is an example I have myself, I confuse hunger and anger. So because my internal awareness system is lowered,
Mhm.
I will realize I haven't eaten, but I actually think it's anger. So I start responding like it's anger and then I
Mm,
eat and then it disappears. So when we
interesting.
look
So
at
you
the nervous
really are
system,
hangry.
yeah, yeah.
Maybe
So
that's my problem.
it's the same with like young kids. Obviously, we have mixed states where like play. So when you watch young children play and they're all happy-go-lucky, and then suddenly siblings start having a punch on,
Mm,
is because the physiological response of like your body, your heart's increasing, but you then confused whether it's happiness, anger,
yeah.
panic, and that's where co-regulation comes in. So this is when we
Mhm.
show them, oh, that was happiness, or this was that.
That happens with Emmy with excitement, and
Mm,
and she just sometimes can't tell the difference between being excited and being anxious.
yeah,
So we have problems with those two being confused. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, definitely. Okay. What preventative strategies can be used to mitigate challenging behaviors before they escalate?
Um, So there's a range of them. So from an OT point of view, we'd look a lot at things like behaviour. We are behaviour, sorry, environmental cues. We'd look around the environment, the demands and all those things. And then we'd look from where I come from is their like nervous system. So for example, if we were seeing signs of maybe not safe and social, maybe flight fight, and then a demand came in that was meant for safe and social, or I know one of the questions is around sensory strategies, or
Mm,
if I gave them a sensory strategy that didn't meet that need, then they can trigger things off. For example, if someone's in flight and fight or they're mobilizing, right? They're moving around. A lot of times people will say, oh, jump on a trampoline because they need to expel energy. But if you start jumping on a trampoline, your heart rate's going to go up.
mm,
You then may think that's anger. So now we're going to escalate even further. So the
mhm.
right strategy wasn't there. It's the same as
Right.
headphones. The right strategy wasn't met at the right need. And
Yeah.
then you'll get a lot of times people say, oh, that strategy doesn't work.
It's
But it's just
but
the,
it's looking at the function of what the behavior is, right? So there was a student at school that I'm at now, and I just observed him for a bit, and he was doing the same behavior, but for two different reasons.
Mm,
So one was because he wanted to play with someone else, so he was trying to get their attention, and the other one was when he was feeling frustrated. But it looked the same to the staff
yeah.
because they hadn't actually just stood back and didn't have the chance to do it, just stand back and observe. So it would actually need like two different strategies to address
Oh,
those, right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's where your team, when they work really well together, will figure that out. So this is, like I don't have all these answers as an OT. I need the behavior practitioner in because they're going to tell me the
Mm,
function of it, and then I can look at the nervous system with that function. So
yeah.
I can say, okay, well, actually, that function was we wanted to work on, example for Imi, the function is, maybe getting someone's attention. Well, is it the right arousal system? Has she
Mm,
got the right strategy to get someone's attention or be in a
yeah.
right arousal zone?
Mm,
Or does she have to do this?
yeah. Interesting. I think you've covered the sensory one. I'm just going to highlight Amanda's comment. She said, when burnout is taking place, is it right to just let it play out? For example, Ashton spending the first week of holidays in bed alone, not tolerating much at all. Second week, much happier and able to go out.
Yeah. So um, I always like to think of it, like again about yourself. If your body starts to show you signs of things that burnout are going, if you keep pushing through, it's not going to get any better. Sickness,
Yeah.
same thing. So resting. When I work with families around you, we do your nervous system and identify your different, what we'd call your ladders. And then we can actually start to work on your week and plan your week out. So instead of having like multiple high arousal activities and then absolute burnout, we can do things like high arousal activities that we know are going to make their nervous system really hard. But then we provide a day with limited demand so the nervous system can rest.
So Emmy
And
needs,
then we
yeah.
go again and up again. So, for example, if for Ashton, if he just needed a week of rest because school was hard, that's fine. That's
Mm,
great, that low demand. But then there comes a time that individuals may stay away because their nervous system likes that, and that's the control side of things. So we do need to put
mm,
them in discomfort and show them how to safely manage that discomfort, because then you can have a lot of withdrawals, a lot of isolation,
yeah.
because it's the
Such a fine
unfamiliar.
line, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Great question. And then Corinne said Zoe is the opposite to Ashton. So she can go out the first week, but then before going to back to school, anxiety, vomiting, bad dreams.
Yeah. So
It's
it's just
really
the nervous.
hard. Yeah. Yeah. Um, we've been really fortunate that Emmy loves school, but there's so many kids just like her that really just that obviously the right supports aren't in place for them and they find school really challenging.
Yeah. And over time, if that experience has been not the greatest and you've not felt safe, you will just perceive this. So the other, like, it becomes protection over connection. I'm going to protect
Mm,
myself rather than connect to this situation.
mm,
So if that means having high behavior so that you don't make me do something, I may do that so that I
mm,
don't have to do it. And so then it's just a fine line of
yeah.
building and connecting.
Yeah. Yeah. And the last question we had from the community was, what are some safe and effective ways to handle aggressive behaviour in children?
I guess it
It's a
depends what
loaded
behavior.
question. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Look, when someone's in fight flight, also in that high level where the aggression, again, behavior support practitioner would come in mostly here, the more space is better. So, like a lot of people always think your natural response is to go to them and give them pressure. But if you think of your
Mm,
nervous system and it's trying to get away from something, and then someone comes in and gives you pressure, it can escalate even further. So when we
mm,
look at in terms of where I would work with this here, is I would show you what signs of that individual means that you can intervene, and so
mm,
you match them at the right level. Rather than a lot of times families will come and say, I've been hit, or I've been trying to protect them and keep them safe, like headbutting, right? For example,
mm.
headbutting. I try and put something between me and the headbutting, and then I get hit. It's not conscious that I'm doing it. It's because their body is like, I need you to go away from me, and you're coming
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
So I always think like safety first, maintain space, maintain eye contact, things like that. But also, if you get to learn their nervous system, you can preempt it coming.
Yeah. I
So
think
then you
what
can
I was going to
safely.
say, it's so individual. Like
Mm,
for Emmy, yeah, hold on, I got to share this right away. Can we bottle Sally up so we can have all her wonderfulness? No, she's mine. Ha ha ha. No, we can share. She's awesome. I totally agree, Brie. Like for Emmy, I know to stop talking, and I had to learn because I'm a fixer. I don't know if any of you can relate to that, but if she's upset or something's going on, I want to fix it. But I had to get okay with the fact that in that moment, my job is not to fix, it's just to help her be as safe as possible and to do less talking. And I'm always like, I go, oh, like first I validate, I can see you're feeling frustrated. But then once she's really upset, there is nothing that I can do. Like it's literally just keep safety around her.
Yeah. And like we talked about this before, you wanting to fix that is also your dysregulation. So you're starting to get dysregulated. And so then it's like, I will feel better if she stops. So how do I make her stop?
Yeah.
And so that's what we address. Okay, why do you feel like that? How do we stop you feeling like that in that moment? Because that's how it will turn around.
Yeah.
And it will calm down. And that's why, for families, it's really tricky because say a support worker or a therapist come in and they seem to like be able to work and do all these things. It's because we don't have that emotional connection. We're okay to let that go on. But it's hard as a parent. It's hard to see your child in that much distress. And so that's where I work with families is too. Like I always give them multiple options for therapy. And it's like, we can go any way you want, but you have to be ready because we could go the hard yard and I can go and put them into distress. But if you're not okay, this isn't going to work.
Yeah. Yeah. So interesting. We could talk about this all day. Look, we've been 45 minutes already. Have you guys found this really helpful? We'll see. Everyone loves when I share you with them. All right. So if you have any further questions, feel free to comment and I'll get in touch with Sally. If you want to get in touch with Sally, reach out to me. I'll pass her email along to you guys. Oh, good, Corinne. I'm glad you found it very helpful. Sorry, my dogs are going off. They're in fight. I think Richie's coming in the door. And if you think, yes, Brie, you do. You need Sally in your life, definitely. Honestly, I cannot recommend enough. So if we maybe in future we could convince Sally to come back and talk to us again, if you guys would find that helpful. But I just really want to thank you for your time today, Sally, and sharing all your wisdom with us. Oh, look, someone's excited for OT now. You've re-inspired them.
Great. Yeah.
Love it.
And then like one thing I would say for OT is OT can be anything. That's one thing I always say to parents. What is it that you want? Because OTs, we can do anything. It's not just about fine motor, gross motor. OT mostly is about what does a family need? What makes a family's life? And trust me, when we talked about a family holiday, she was not keen.
No, it was I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified. And now I'm so excited for tomorrow. We've even got T-shirts with cartoon versions of ourselves on it for everyone to wear. Cooper's not keen to wear the T-shirt, but he's wearing it tomorrow. So we will make him. But no, honestly, I loved having that goal because it was for everybody and it made everybody invested in it.
Because as you said, Emmy is like, she's not silo. It's not Emmy's world.
Yeah.
Emmy's part of a family and there's things that Emmy needs to do as a family.
Yeah. And I always feel guilty going, like, we love to travel and I always felt guilty going away without her, but we needed to be able to have a relaxing holiday. But now that Emmy's getting older and her special interest is geography and travel, and she knows how to get onto my phone and see where I've been and stalk me on Facebook. If we go away without her, that's not actually something that I want to do now. Like, I want to find ways where we can do it all together. So think about what you really want for your family and then make that the goal with the OT. That's, I suppose, what it's supposed to be for, right? Rather than,
absolutely.
I feel like it's got a very limited scope at the moment.
Oh, and this is what the NDIS is about, giving people with a disability the opportunity to do things that everyone is doing. Like, people go on holidays, people go in the community.
Yeah.
So that's what our goals should be.
Yeah,
not
totally.
can we hold a pencil?
Yes.
Those
Yeah.
things like that. Because once they turn 18, suddenly they're meant to be able to be in the community and be safe and be things. Well, if you didn't practice in the community, how do we get in there?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%. All right. Thanks for joining us, beautiful peeps. And thank you again, Sally. And we will see you next time. Have a great day, guys.